Hey, what's up? It's the psychologist or L here, and today in this video, as promised, I am going to share with you an a very effective alternative treatment. Can't quite call it a cure, even though it did alleviate all of the symptoms associated with Parkinson's disease in a patient who had Parkinson's disease for 5 years, diagnosed by two different neurologists, and in 6 days of treatment IV uh, with IV drip infusion, uh, NAD. That's a coenzyme that naturally occurs in the body. It costs $96 to produce. However, to get the IV drip infusion with the leading experts in Louisiana who have more than 20 years experience working with this coenzyme with patients, it costs a lot more than that. I'm making these videos to try and raise awareness about that, and I know I got a lot of stuff I can cook with. I'm kind of doing a flash fry uh, version right now, because I can do that, or I can cook on low heat all steady all day. So yes, this. So I was at Springfield Wellness Center in Louisiana. You can probably tell from my accent, I don't have a southern accent. I was at a university getting a master's degree in psychology, and uh, because I'm not trying to brag. I'm not sure how to say this. Um, like in high school, you know how you would notice like some people just don't care. Some people spend so much time trying to make cheat sheets or like tricky ways to cheat that like if they just studied, they'd probably be good. And then some people study and then they still fail, or some people study and then they do good. So in high school, I noticed like, well, like why do all of that? Like, what's the fastest shortcut? And that, like, the teacher, they're a person too, and they have a textbook, and they they've been teaching for years, and they have a certain, you know, there's certain information in the textbook that they'll talk about and present with a little bit more enthusiasm or focus in class than other information. So if you just study the presentation of, like, if you're even just like half paying attention, you don't need a textbook, you don't need a notebook. You can just pick up on, well, you kind of do when you first start doing this. It's basically you just pick up on how the teacher or professor is presenting information that they have to cover in that class, what they're enthusiastic about, what they're focused on, because they've been doing it for years. So they definitely have tells of what's going to be on exams. And then you also have to consider, they're people. People get into routines and habits and patterns. So, I mean, imagine if your favorite sports team, or your, like, this season and the NBA playoffs, if you had to come up with 50 questions where for every question you have a real answer, the fake out answer, the people who kind of sort of paid attention but not really may pick this answer, and the like don't care at all, like, joke answer, and you have to come up with four of those for every question. Like, that's a lot. Like, unless you sit down and do that, I mean, you can imagine someone sitting down and do that. And since you're seeing these teachers and professors almost every day for, like 45 minutes, if it's high school, is that how long high school classes are? Or like sometimes 3 hours at a time with college professors. I mean, it's really easy, especially after like the first exam, to get a read on these, on their presentation of the information. So then, like, you don't even really have to know much. You can pick up on their scent that, like, they inevitably fall into a pattern when they're making these 1 to 50 or however many questions there are, and they'll put like the real answer, then the answer almost no one would pick, and then the fake out answer, and then the like, oh, some people who may have half been paying attention may pick this answer. And then the next question, it'll be like the fake out answer will be first, and the real answer will be in the 3 slot. And like once you find that pattern, then you're good, you're golden. You can like finish exams in almost no time. Like an exam that takes other students like hours to complete, you can complete in a half hour, and then you're not wasting a bunch of time studying for a lot of stuff that isn't really going to help you out or do much for you in real life. You're not wasting a lot of time like trying to come up with ways to cheat and stuff, and you're still able to get good grades while also not like having to pay much attention, because instead you're just paying a little bit of attention to the most important things. So with that being said, I actually kind of forgot why I even started saying that. Oh, I'm like not that smart. Um, as promised in another video, um, uh, I'm going to talk about the cure for a very effective treatment for Parkinson's and neurodegenerative conditions in this video. And that seems like a sentence that most neurologists and professors in high academia would say that like that's impossible. Here's a bunch of published scholarly journals that talk about how difficult neuroregeneration is, or even impossible in some instances, and how stem cell research seems like the focal point for this. So yeah, those are up on the screen. So anyways, oh yeah, now I remember, because when I was at college, the professors, they picked up on this. I went for psychology, and by the time I was a sophomore there, and some of the professors had gotten to know me, had me in class, like more than one class, because they knew I was driving like a half-hour drive, and sometimes I would stay there with some friends, and sometimes I wouldn't. That like most professors, they were like, you can just show up when you feel like it, as long as you keep like your 4.0 on exams. And so when I asked like the specific university, I don't know, it's Rider University. I'm like, because I'm gonna have the link to the publication, and it's mentioned there. So yeah, they don't do out-of-state internships, and so when I asked to do an internship, because in 2017 in Louisiana at Springfield Wellness Center, I got really cool with the dean of psychology, the psychology program at that time, and he was really cool. He was from, I think, Uganda, and he was really smart in his own way, because he was a lawyer and a psychologist. And he was funny because like he was a cool guy, and except like some like cultural things he just was like completely oblivious to. Like he would scare the living shit out of some students by being like just for fun, like, and like I picked up he was doing it like just for kicks and for fun. And like he would have students come in, and because he had kind of an accent, and like people knew there was a little bit of like cultural uh you know can be mixed in translation, uh like sometimes he would start a class and then he would like just drop the chalk, and like he'd be writing on the chalkboard and he'd just drop the chalk and be like, okay, now everyone close your books and put them in your away, uh, pop quiz, and this will be 15% of your final grade. And he would just be doing it to see like if students were like fell for it as like a joke, and like he in his mind he thought like all the students knew he was joking, and there would be students like freaking out, and then he would have to like roll it back and be like, oh no, I'm joking, and there would still be students like, wait, are you like really joking? And you'd be like, yeah, wasn't that a funny joke? And like some students didn't like that. I thought he was really cool and funny. And like the other thing he would do is he would be lecturing, and he would just like, as far as personal space, like he would just like sit on students' desks and lecture and be like, yeah, like I'm just sitting here chilling lecturing, like this is normal for me, like keep taking notes, like what are you gonna do? Be like, hey, that's uncomfortable because you're like really kind of up in my personal space, but like it's not that much because it's like a desk, like it's not like he's right up in your face. But anyways, he was like, yeah, I'll have to convince like other members on the psychology board or whatever, and the biggest problem is I would have to find a professor from Rider University that would be willing to travel to Louisiana at least twice to, you know, supervise and say like, oh, I physically went there and saw Lance was there, and like it's all not just made up. And it just so happened that one of the professors that really liked me, like she did have a southern accent. I had no idea she was from Louisiana. Like literally a half hour away from Springfield Wellness Center, which is in a very rural, almost middle of nowhere, except like, you know, that southern accent, southern laid back, as a cool atmosphere. And I know she was like half an hour away from their clinic, so she volunteered to do that, and it actually worked, and that was really cool. And at that time, like I knew a lot about NAD. If you search for NAD, like at that time, NASA and Springfield Wellness Center were the only places working on NAD IV infusions with people, and Louisiana and Springfield Wellness Center, they've been doing it for more than 20 years to treat almost all forms of addiction with little to no withdrawal effects. I'm talking by day 2 or 3, people that have had addictions for 10 plus years are saying that they feel like $1,000,000. They feel like they're in their 20s at their peak again. They feel like they could wrestle a bear. They feel phenomenal. And it's a 10-day treatment. I would say for some, and part of what's cool is it doesn't seem, the dosage, like how much of a substance someone was using and for how long, it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on how quickly and rapidly an IV infusion of NAD can heal. If there's any withdrawal symptoms, they're usually very mild and within the first 2 to 3 days. After that, it's typically smooth sailing. I was there for 2 years. I, counseled and was heavily involved in the treatment process with thousands of patients for like thousands of hours working there. So I got a lot of experience, and the CEOs and owners, Dr. Paula Norris Medier and Dr. Richard Medier, Dr. Paulinoris Medier, she's wrote a book about NAD that you can buy on Amazon or online or at the bookstore. So like that's pretty cool. And Dr. Richard Medier, um, his whatever university he graduated from, they almost like disowned him, even though he was in the top 10 or whatever they call like the best student. Except he's like mad cool about it. Like we'll be talking about something that's like uncharted waters. Like, oh, why do you think NASA's working for this? Well, I think because NAD can affect sirtuins and genetic expression that to travel farther into space than like the moon, like to travel to Mars, like Elon Musk keeps talking about, to protect the DNA from getting damaged by solar radiation. IV infusions of NAD is like one of the top, if not the top, options for that, even though in the civilian field there's a ton of research that can still be done in a variety of fields of science: biochemistry, organic chemistry, physiology and anatomy, neurology, neurochemistry, psychology, counseling. The list it's a big list. So, and he's cool because like he'll be talking about that as casual as like, oh, did you see the game yesterday? Like, oh yeah, like that was a good game until like halfway through the fourth, and then it it's kind of boring. It's like because what so yeah, and like and then that university wrote a letter of apology because like first they were saying he was crazy for even being interested in using NAD to treat patients, and then after a few years, like he's been the top 10 doctor in the state of Louisiana for several years. So like this letter of recommendation that he wrote is like that's pretty cool. Like technically retired now. He's internationally known. He's probably like the most experienced doctor with NAD in treating people. Him and Dr. Nady Brady. Dr. Nady Brady works on animal models in Australia, and so like they are internationally known. And these are like not like these are like top tier heavy hitter doctors. So I was very interested because NAD and melanin have a lot of similarities in that oxidative stress. And here is what Dr. Nady Brady wrote on a comment on the back of Dr. Paulinoris Medier's book. And this is true, that oxidative stress or free radicals are very damaging and can cause a lot of different diseases. And NAD and melanin, NAD through the electron transport chain where it gets a hydrogen, so it goes from NAD to NADH, it neutralizes free radicals and turns them into ATP and mitochondrial cellular energy. Melanin is actually like kind of a step better at that because melanin can neutralize a free radical with a redox reaction while doing an oxidative reaction on the other side of the molecule, so it can do multiple interactions at the same time while neutralizing free radicals. And that's the reason why more melanin is good for protection from intense UV sunlight, among other things. That's a different topic. Although that's another molecule that has been severely underfunded and under-researched along with NAD. So I was interested because at that time in 2017, like them and NASA were working with it. So getting the opportunity to work with doctors of that caliber, it's like, whoa, that's really cool. And them being receptive and very welcoming and encouraging is like, oh, like I gotta come up with something. Like the bar is set kind of high, and like I play baseball competitively most of my, like I'm kind of used to high pressure and stuff. So like I was all in, and they had gotten NAD is so safe. Um, liquid NAD for IV infusion costs $96 to make. What they charge, I mean, they have been doing it for 20 years. They are the leading experts, and it's in the tens of thousands of dollars. I am not business guy. I mean, I feel like I could do business and understand that if I wanted to. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that because NAD occurs in the body naturally, it's kind of difficult to get funding for research and some other things and that, or insurance to help cover treatment. So that's very unfortunate because this can help a lot of people. And at first, they had been using it mostly for substance abuse. It also improves cognitive abilities. There's 2 studies on that. I'll put them in this video. One of them is actually part of my research. And it's interesting because typically with Parkinson's, there's a severe decrease in dopamine and cognitive deficiencies. And this patient was borderline genius, and to begin with, so using Lumosity, like it was the best / only measuring tool instrument I had at the time to measure cognitive abilities. Is better than nothing. I mean, there's barely any research on PK, like pharmacokinetic information about NAD, things like max saturation or the plateau effect, or steady state, where the IV infusion medicine reaches the max absorption, the max saturation, the most highest level it's going to reach in the body where the body can process it and use it. And like there's a little bit of information on things like that, on things like precursors, or how or some of the enzymes that NAD gets broken down into, and how they have healing effects as well. However, like I said, there's a ton of more research, and it's crazy that they've been open for more than 20 years. And I thought, maybe the stigma against addiction and substance abuse maybe plays a role in that. So this is another reason why I'm, hype about this Parkinson's neurodegenerative research. And why I wanted to go to Springfield Wellness Center was because this NAD is so safe that they had actually, in 2017, they had got approval from the state of Louisiana, from all the regulatory boards and everyone they had to get approval from, to work with pregnant women who were still drinking alcohol, and they wanted to treat the pregnant woman and the developing baby at the same time with NAD. And to me, being able to help someone and help, because NAD can turn on or off certain genes, and that would potentially turn off a gene that could have that baby's baby have be more likely to have a higher chance of getting addicted to alcohol, and it could turn off that gene right then and there. So being able to help the mother, help the baby, help the family members get their life back, and also treat like generations that haven't even come into existence yet while advancing science, that like if you're even somewhat into being in science, to learn things, to advance science, to help people and progress, knowledge and wisdom, and um, and get some kind of joy from seeing the healing effects and helping other people, and also the research and helping other people. If you're even like a little bit into that, then it's like, wow, how could you not want to go all in on an opportunity like that? And they even had the where they were going to build the facility to do that. The patients who had signed up, because it was going to be like a free clinical trial treatment with a small group, I believe it was 12 or 13 patients, it was all ready, and then at the last minute the OBGYN backed out. I'm not sure why they just didn't find another OBGYN. The impression I got was it was like one of the best OBGYNs in the state of Louisiana, and they had like known each other, or like worked with each other before, so it was impractical to. I don't know why they didn't just find another OBGYN, because that would have been really cool research, and that's research that really deserves to be funded. Anyways, getting to my point, so I was there. I read Dr. Nady Brady's book about NAD. I have a pretty strong background in biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, neurology, neurochemistry, science, and I there was some talk about some patients with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia, and I'm talking like single digit, like one Parkinson's patient, two dementia, and two Alzheimer's, or three Alzheimer's, and it worked like for some of them with mixed results in that 20-year time frame. So doing some research, I suggested that, hey, like we should really do a more formal study with a patient with a neurodegenerative condition. So a patient with Parkinson's came into the clinic. This patient, they were they actually are patented for a very it's a sophisticated and almost like simple, but it's like, wow, that's pretty smart and clever, because he looked at it from a perspective that no one else was looking at it from, to figure out this medical patent that has helped a lot of people. So like this guy was already like borderline legit genius. And even though Parkinson's affects cognitive abilities negatively, like his cognitive abilities, the patient's cognitive abilities went up with the NAD treatment. And the first day I didn't get any measurements. Here's the paper. It's published in a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. It was presented. Here's me presenting it at the International Society for Neuroscience in Chicago in 2019. So basically, the first measurement was on the second day, and about 35 hours into the full treatment. And so I used the accelerometer and gyroscope on a cell phone to measure tremors. Like it was difficult. Like I couldn't get blood drawn to like figure out exact max saturation rate and things like that. It's almost criminal how underfunded and like ignored research is with this coenzyme, given how much potential it has. Like, could it put a lot of people that aren't doing good jobs at like being doctors and healing and helping people, or psychologists or counselors, out of work in time? Like not overnight, but in time, possibly. But could it like provide a lot of work that like actually gets good results and improves treatment and improves quality of life for everyone, and it's like a win-win-win, absolutely, that's undeniable. Like, I should not be able to say, here's something that literally cured Parkinson's in a patient that had it for 5 years in 48 hours at the 35-hour mark. So that's right around when, with the information we have, that around the so the first 2 days was a 1,500 milligram dose. That's the highest dose you can get without it. 1,500 milligrams in an IV infusion that takes about 8 or so hours to finish the IV drip. That is max saturation. If it was 1,600 milligrams, you would piss out 100 milligrams. So the first 2 days for this patient, I recommended that we do 1,500 milligrams so that we could reach the max saturation in like around the second day. Because once you reach max saturation, then you can kind of drop the dose. The body gets more used to levels of NAD being jumped up. And yeah, so at 35 hours in, so right around where max saturation would be reached, scores were at 30 some hours in, at the first measurement, scores were 54 hertz for vertical tremors, 47 hertz for horizontal tremors. This is using an app on a gyro that utilizes the accelerometer and gyroscope on a cell phone to track tremors in hertz. So it's empirical, repeatable, and a blueprint that can be copied to raise this sample size from one case study to more patients. However, since 2019, very little work has been done on that, and the 3 patients that it has been done on, and I'll talk about that later, they didn't even use the accelerometer or gyroscope. They cited my research, and like on Google, is there a cure for Parkinson's? Does NAD cure Parkinson's? Like, this research, like, these pictures come up. That's kind of wild. Anyways, 35 hours in, or 36 hours in, so that would be right around max saturation. The scores went from 54 hertz vertical, 47 hertz horizontal, and 31 posterior anterior. So that's like this, like tilting. Technically it's like front back, except the way that it was like tilting, and that meant, like, including that kind of threw off some of the measurements, because there really wasn't much. There was some difference and improvement there. However, the dominant tremors were not posterior anterior, they were vertical and horizontal. And for reference, myself, Dr. Paula Norris-Medier, and another doctor there, Dr. Tyson Olds, used the app. You basically press start and then hold it in your hand and just try to hold it as still as you can. And like, I feel like I'm holding it pretty still now. And like, the scores from all 3 of us ranged from 5 to 15 hertz in those 3 dimensions. So the like roundabout baseline was like 15 hertz for each of those, just for reference. So at 36 hours in, it went from it went from 54 hertz vertical to 31 hertz vertical, 47 hertz horizontal to 20 hertz horizontal, and 31 front, back, posterior, anterior to 30 posterior, anterior. So that's a 52% decrease in vertical tremors, 42% decrease in horizontal tremors, and a 1% decrease in anterior posterior tremors. And even like some people taking videos that are shaky, like it's that tilting of the hand more so than like vertical or horizontal shaking of the hand. So I feel like that did kind of throw some numbers off. In total, so the biggest drops occurred at right around the max saturation or the plateau or steady state when that was achieved. I can talk more about the other numbers. I'm doing more of a flash fry fast cook on this video. In total, from the first measurement to the final measurement on when they completed the treatment, the vertical tremors had decreased by 75.9%, horizontal tremors had decreased by 83%, and anterior posterior tremors by 9.1%. So collectively, like again, that 9.1% kind of throws this off. The tremors decreased by 54.7%. That's why you see this on the Google search thing. And like for example, at days 4 and 5, vertical tremor was 15, horizontal was 4, and anterior posterior was 24. At 3 hours before then, on day 3, vertical tremors were 12, horizontal 16, anterior posterior 29. So the tremors had dropped after that big drop, after it hit the plateau or the steady state IV drip effect. The tremors in the vertical and horizontal axes, for the most part, they dropped into the baseline range, and for the most part they stayed there. And this patient was kind enough to send me emails of them doing the app and the results, and I actually forgot to write that down on these notes that I'm glancing down at. However, they pretty much stayed the same. Like they stayed in the baseline, and I did include that in this graph. So there you go. And so I'm aware that in 2025, the same journal, the Herald and Springfield Wellness Center, worked with 3 patients that had Parkinson's. 2 out of the 3, they used a Likert scale, so like observing symptoms on a scale of 1 to 10 instead of like something that's already established and empirical, like the accelerometer and gyroscope on a phone. Like, why would you do that? And then the author, who's a doctor and supposed to be way smarter than me, like in his critique, because that's part of when you write something for publication, like you can't really put, it's like assumed that everyone that's reading it like knows everything. So why and how you think it works, like no, they just want to see the results and then like a critique of how you may have been able to like get some of the data a little better or something like that. And this dude, I don't know his name because I didn't work with him at any point. He literally says one of his critiques is using a Likert scale, and it's like, and then he references my work, and it's like, Did you bother to read that at all? Like, why do you think I chose to measure it that way? Like, yeah, it's effective and empirical. However, that was the first study on Parkinson's, and like that provides a blueprint for future studies where it's empirical. And if you have a smartphone, you can like get those same measurements in hertz and then just compare it to the dose of the IV NAD drip and the drip rate, and um, and that 2 out of 3 of the Parkinson's patients they were reported that symptoms and tremors dropped by 50% by the third day. And it's really important to note something that I don't think they even picked up on was because they were using 1,000 milligram IV drips, bags of NAD. And so if you're using 1,000 milligrams by day 3 instead of 1,500 milligrams, then somewhere around in day 3 you're going to hit that max saturation plateau steady state effect. And that's when they saw the biggest drop in tremors, and their Likert scale rate this from 1 to 10 study. And then they have some other graphs and charts about like them praying and fatigue or stress and stuff. I don't, I wasn't there, so I mean, take that as you will. I really think that the max saturation and reaching that is a critical role in the treatment, because after this research, when I was, in between 2017 and 2019, when I was working there, patients with Parkinson's that were interested in the treatment would get referred to me, either through phone or email. And I remember at least one of the patients had supplements of NAD, and I did my best. Like, I could mimic at the rate of absorption for this particular supplement and route of administration, I could mimic the 1,500 milligrams in a 24-hour time frame, not in a 8-hour time frame. But I mean, that was the best I could do, except that obviously throws off how fast you reach max saturation. The plateau or the steady state is more so specific for IV drip infusions. So this particular patient, they were in the very early stages of developing Parkinson's symptoms and didn't get any relief from the same amount of milligrams delivered through a different route of administration. However, it took a lot longer for the body and for the NAD to get to the like max saturation levels. So that's another reason, that kind of thing that like tipped me off to why it may have worked so well and got the results it did. The other thing is if you want to know why and how I think this got the results it did, I'll talk about that in another video, because this video is already pretty long. So if you stayed and watched, thank you, I appreciate it. This is the psychologist, or L, and yeah, I said I would make a video about a very promising and very impressive, not quite, I'm not allowed to say cure, for Parkinson's and neurodegenerative conditions. And I've got some more evidence and an explanation / like research that I did on my own as to how and why I feel like this works. The short answer, if you're a doctor or neurologist and in this field, and you're already aware of how like something like transcranial direct current stimulation to the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex or to other areas of the brain, so artificial neuroelectric synaptic activity, can alleviate tremors and Parkinson's symptoms, or a brain implant for someone with epilepsy, and artificial neuroelectric synaptic activity can alleviate symptoms. Well, like, what's the difference? That's outside external artificial neuroelectric. This is an IV drip of a coenzyme NAD that gets into every cell, every neuron in the body, and pumps up the ATP and mitochondria and energy. So, So in other words, I'm saying I think it restores the depleted or damaged neurons, and instead of neuroelectric artificial synaptic activity, it restores either fully or enough neurochemical and neuroelectric synaptic activity, and that's why you see the robust, sustained results and the difference. So I'll talk about that and another very interesting case in my next video. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate this. And this is also kind of like asking for if there's any doctor. I've spoken several times with the CEOs and owners, Dr. Paul Norris Medier, Dr. Richard Medier, and I've got 2 years experience. I'm a psychologist. You need a doctor for like comfort meds and just for basic type things, because it's basically just an IV drip, and then just make sure everyone's all good. A psychologist or counselor to work with patients, because one of the biggest advantages of being able to treat someone in a rural, laid-back, southern comfort kind of setting in a 10-day treatment and then send them back to, like, obviously it's loosening neural networks and allowing them to be rearranged, so addictions and habits and cravings and things can be like the neural network can be loosened more so by the help of this coenzyme NAD. However, then when they go back to, so forming an aftercare plan is like that's really important, because some patients can kind of they feel so good so fast and then go back to the same environment, the same people, places, and things without a strong aftercare plan and support system. And so that's important. And then a nurse to hook up the IV drip, or anyone with common sense can hook up an IV drip. So they have trained, because there's a few other places that offer IV NAD treatment. However, you have to be sure that you check the apothecary that's making it is making it as close to 99% pure as possible. I can't speak on NAD that is not 99% pure. I would say if it's not at least 99% or like 98% pure, then you may as well be using a placebo. So, because there are a lot of like grifters and stuff that hear it has anti-aging effects, and that's true. It does. I'll do a video talking more about science of NAD as well. I've been talking for too long. I apologize. It just seems kind of cool. I also presented this at a Trump rally in Biloxi, Missouri or Mississippi, and like here's a video of that, and here's the pictures of that, and I'll talk about that in another video. Let's save that for next time. I've been talking for too long. If you stayed and watched for this long, thank you. And yeah, I'll be rolling out some more cool content like this. So yeah, have a nice day, and until next time.